All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the School District of Springfield Township Board of School Directors regular board meeting, January 19th, 2016. Let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Reading of the mission statement. Ms. Sarsfield.
The mission of the School District of Springfield Township is to educate and develop all students as learners and citizens who are high-achieving, resilient, and responsible in a changing global community.
Roll call.
Mr. Chapman. Here. Ms. Casalis. Mr. Lapidus. Ms. Nelson. Here. Mr. Rayer. Ms. Sarsfield.
Here.
Dr. Taratusky. Mr. Taylor. Here. Ms. Lipinski.
Here. Announcements. The board, at its discretion, may videotape all or any portion of public board meetings subject to the limitations set forth in Policy 006.2, Broadcasting of Meetings. Board meetings will be broadcast on Friday afternoon following the board meeting. I'd also like to announce that we had an executive session prior to this meeting to discuss a legal matter. Are there any public comments on agenda items? Approval of minutes. December 1st, 2015, reorganization meeting, board minutes G, and December 1st, 2015, regular meeting, board minutes H. Is there a motion? Is there a second? Any questions or comments? Mr. King?
Mr. Chapman. Ms. Casalis. Mr. Lapidus. Ms. Nelson. Ms. Sarsfield. Dr. Taratusky. Mr. Taylor. Ms. Lipinski.
Aye. Approval of Treasurer's Report. Treasurer's Report D, November 2015. Treasurer's Report E, December 2015. Is there a motion? Is there a second? Any questions or comments? Mr. King?
Mr. Chapman. Ms. Casalis. Mr. Lapidus. Ms. Nelson. Ms. Sarsfield. Dr. Taratusky. Mr. Taylor. Ms. Lipinski.
Aye. Reports and information. District PTA report. And I know I'm going to say this wrong, I apologize. Naeem Moore.
Good evening, everybody.
evening.
Happy New Year.
New Year.
Did I say it right?
Yes, Naeem.
Okay, thanks.
So, yes, I'm Naeem Moore, co-president of the EEHSP.
I'm Freddie Murray, the other co-president of the EEHSP.
Only thing we have to report this month, there's a meeting this Thursday that everyone's welcome to come. It's a general meeting. It's going to be at Enfield Elementary, 6:30 in the library. We'll be going over some upcoming events. One thing that we're working on is the carnival, which is this May 21st. So it's going to be pretty cool this year. We have 2 new chairs that are working on it, so we hope that you guys enjoy it and see the difference between the years past.
One note is that there is a new vice president of the EEHSP, Joe Randa, who was also one of the co-chairs of the DADS committee, who will also be co-chairing the carnival. DADS committee is a committee that we've always had at the EEHSP historically. We're trying to revamp it this year. We've had a outpouring of dads who want to participate. So that's new for this year. We're still looking for volunteers as well.
That's it.
Is that it?
Yeah.
I think so.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Right.
Have a good
Thank
evening.
Moving Moving on to the Student Council report, Catherine Nelson and Max Nichols.
Hello, I'm Max Michaels.
I'm Catherine Nelson.
We wanted to talk about our monthly happenings in Student Council. So first off, we wanted to congratulate Emily Henry and Hannah Grothison and the January Student Committee for organizing and running a successful January hair raiser. 225 donors from the Springfield community now sport shorter styles after donating their hair during yesterday's Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service event. Participants donated between 8 and 14 inches of their hair to Pantene's Beautiful Lengths program, who will use the hair to make wigs for children battling cancer. Local hairstylists, parents, and cosmetology students from Eastern Center for Arts and Technology helped to make the day a success. A special shout out goes to Mrs. Silvius and Mrs. Pierman for having their hair cut and donated. A huge Spartan thank you to all the volunteers and donors.
On February 17th, the Student Council will host its annual badminton tournament. Students will compete in teams of 2. Teams will receive a discounted registration fee if they wear some form of eye protection. We will crown 2 champion teams. One is the badminton championship game, and the other team will win for best uniform.
The Student Council is busy preparing for this year's James Taylor Day. The celebration of diversity will occur the morning of March 18th. We are excited to feature the unique cultures, traditions, and customs of our Springfield community. While we have most of the morning planned, we hope to include more of our own students and staff. If anyone is willing to share elements of their culture, dance, music, religion, heritage, history, or more, please email Mrs. Ward by January 27th. Help us celebrate the diversity that makes Springfield so great.
Also in March, we will hold our annual March Madness tournament. Students will compete throughout the day, with the finals occurring during an all-school assembly in the gymnasium at the end of the day. The gym will be packed with players, fans, and the pep band. Last year, the juniors ran the student tournament. The day will end the All-Star game, in which the best students take on the faculty.
Thank you. Yes.
No. Go ahead.
Ms. Lipinski gave us the pleasure of listening to you perform a cappella, right? It was like you.
Oh,
Video?
yes.
Oh, yeah.
Nice job.
Thank you.
I played it for the property committee. I made the property committee listen.
It was a great
Has
concert.
nothing to do with this.
And I wanted to let you guys both know that Mr. King, over here to my left, has graciously volunteered Mrs. Lipinski's hair for next year's January
I would do it
event.
myself, but there's some challenges with that.
I have it colored. I have it colored. I'm not allowed.
But we'll participate in the acapella. You know, the lungs attack.
It was a very great concert.
Thank you. All right, thank you.
Okay, reports of committees. Would be me. We had both a property committee meeting and a finance committee meeting last week, and the agendas were very similar, so I will be giving the report for both of them. After several months of considering the feasibility study we did at the end of last year, looking at different options and doing cost analysis, it is the recommendation of both the property and the finance committees that we will move forward with the plan to build a new K-2 primary school on the site currently occupied by Antonelli, and we will also be considering upgrades to the high school. The scope of those upgrades have not been determined yet. So as far as next steps go, on the agenda this evening is a request to issue an RFP for architect services and designs. We'd like to consider all of our options, so we were hoping to see some different design options from different architects before we move forward. We'll also be starting to do some community outreach to share details of the projects with the public. And we will also be developing a timeline. I know that another big question that everyone is going to have is how the district is going to pay for it. So we've asked Mr. King to maybe give us a brief rundown of where he is and about what potential financing would look like.
I think after next year's hair-raising fundraiser and Ms. Saplinski's contribution to it, we should be able to fund most of it. I'll just take a brief moment to bring rather complex calculations to a summary. I reached out to our financial consultant of PFM, Ms. Jamie Doyle. We discussed the feasibility study that was completed by Gilbert Architect. And also with that, they have what they call the drawdown schedule, which is simply what needs to be done in order to get us to a certain time to be able to occupy a building. We take a look at all of that when things need to be done, and then Gilbert Architects assigned a cost to each one of those functions. So we know when the money is due, when it's going to go out. So after discussing that, we took a look at it and we said, okay, it looks like we're going to need 3 different bond issues, one in each of 3 years. The first one, 10 million, the second one, 45 million, and the third one, 10 million. So 65 million altogether. Again, that adds about $800,000 to the budget in each of the first 3 years. So the next steps with the board is, well, how do we try and deal with the impact of that onto the budget? And on tonight's agenda is step 1. We go out for an RFP. We try and get different ideas. Maybe they cost less, maybe they cost more, who knows? But we try and begin to nail down exactly what it is we want to do. And the closer we get to the event of actually starting the project, we have a better idea of the actual cost. The second event is going to be the results of the RFP. After we pick what we want to do, we're going to go out for the bidding process. And that process alone should help introduce competition and hopefully bring down the costs. And when I keep saying bring down, it's when we do these 5-year projections for estimated costs, there's a lot of guessing. It's a 5-year period. You have to guess how air handling units are going to appreciate in value. You have to do all of these assumptions. So the closer you get to the event, the better able you are to define what the actual cost is expected to be. The third thing that we want to look at is, how do we look at the other parts of the budget to help fund this additional $800,000 rather than taking the entire cost to the taxpayers? Well, part of the project is building a new, that's being recommended, is to build a new school demolishing Enfield. Enfield's a very old building. It was built in the 1940s. It's not very energy efficient. Some of the, in addition to that, some of the planned changes to the high school is to address the HVAC systems at the high school, which is probably the least efficient building in the district. So after we get done that, we're going to experience some energy savings. So those savings can then be freed up to address some of this $800,000 increase for issuing the 3 different bond funds. Another thing that we want to look at is the operational expenses. Again, I'm going to use Enfield. Other than its lack of efficiency, it requires a lot of time and effort to keep the systems going. They're old. Constant maintenance costs. So if we end up with a new school down in Antonelli, the likelihood since it's brand new school at Antonelli, new equipment at the high school, our repair costs are likely to drop as well. So that drop in repair costs then can be moved over to help with the debt. Another idea that we discussed at Finance and at Property Committee was use of fund balance. How can we use some of our fund balance to reduce basically reduce the amount of money that we have to borrow, and therefore reduce that debt? And then after we do all of that, there's always a possibility then there may be some kind of a tax increase to fund some of that. Again, all this would be done under the parameters of Act 1, capped, so that's where we are. So basically, as I said, we have begun to begin, and as we get closer and closer to the event, we'll be able to nail down what the finances look like and give you a better idea of the impact to the district budget as well as the taxpayers.
Does anyone have any questions?
So basically, can then the inefficient energy systems and the repair and maintenance for those systems in Enfield are the reasons that a new building, new K-2 building is needed?
No, that is not the sole reason for that. You'll hear reasons when some of the numbers out of the feasibility study, we looked at different combinations of things before we landed on this one. One of them was, well, let's just get the building up to speed. How much would that cost? Upgrading all the systems. Turned out the estimates were $500,000 to $1 million different. To put all the money and resources to bring that building up to speed. When we discussed it further, even that introduction of those resources still wouldn't deal with the exterior part of Enfield. It would still be not as energy efficient as it could be. So when we looked at what to do with that site and what to do with Antonelli, we said, well, you know what, maybe it would be better just to build new. And there's also a whole slew of issues that we've been talking about since I've been here that are kind of commingled. That's not a very good site. The traffic is horrendous at that intersection. It's a problem. Also, it's limited bus pickup. The bus line, the parent pickup line is also an issue. It all kind of wraps around into if we move down to Antonelli, which is another aging building that's going to need resources. It needs a roof. We've discussed that roof. I think that was one of the first topics when I got here was what are we doing about Antonelli's roof? That's $800,000 to $1,000 to $1 million. So we started looking at that and said, well, then from Antonelli, we always end up back at Erdenheim. What are we going to do about the potential enrollment increases? Modulars, everybody talks about modulars or closing in the SGIs. Wait a minute, if we can build a K-2 down in Antonelli, that relieves the pressure on the Erdenheim facility. We have excess capacity there, so it addresses that issue. It addresses the Enfield issues. We're not dumping $1 million plus into Antonelli for a potential leasee who may or may not be here for 2, 3, 4, 10 years. So wait a minute, maybe it makes sense. And then in addition to that, it just addresses a lot of the issues that seem to keep taking us in circles. High school, what can we do? We need more fields, or we need turf fields so that we can move the sports around a little bit better. Well, if we build down in Antonelli, that frees up the Enfield site to repurpose that for fields, perhaps. So we looked at that. Well, it addresses the field issue. So it kind of just started bringing all of these things together, even to the extent of the buses that we park over at the middle school lot, which are always in the way. Every time there's an event, we have to move them. Well, we could build another lot towards Montgomery Avenue on the new site so we can get all the units in one place. So it addresses that issue. So for the last 2.5 years, as we've been talking and building up all these things, it always goes from one site to the next site to the other site, and we end up back where we started. So there's a lot of reasons why each component of the feasibility study that I believe the committees and potentially the board ended up at, there's lots of reasons for it.
And so just real quickly, you said that the energy savings and the repair costs would be the two things independent of the use of the fund balance and a tax increase that would be used to try and offset this on $800,000 each added to each first 3 years of the budget. Do you have an idea of just a ballpark of the percentage of that $800,000 each year that actually that energy savings or the repair cost would even offset?
I wouldn't even begin to speculate. It's complicated. Again, because like I said, Enfield goes away, and then we do a K-2. It's really not, the square footage may not be apples to apples. We may get tremendous savings from that other building. Will it offset all of the increased costs at Enfield? I'm not sure yet. And that's why I said we have begun to begin And that's our next step, working with Mr. Thorne, some different companies to come in and started looking at it to see if we can start putting numbers that make decent numbers, not just guessing.
Mr. King, can I just ask one question just to clarify? That $65 million amount that you're working from is the actual feasibility study numbers. So at this point, we don't really know where we're going to end up with the high school. So those numbers might come down.
Right, depending on what the options are as a result of the RFP process and some different ideas.
You know, there was a lot of
We got a lot to-
proposed upgrades at the high school that we may decide not to do.
If I may, that's an excellent point. Those numbers are based on Gilbert Architects' vision of the improvements that they have recommended for the high school. Part of the reason for going out for a request for proposals for this project would be to see what other architects envision when they look at the high school and determine what they believe is necessary. And what they recommend may or may not be the same things that Gilbert Architects has recommended. We felt it was part of our due diligence to go out for an RFP to see what other architects recommended as well. So while we know that we want to build a new elementary school, the high school is a little bit more problematic in terms of the vision of exactly what that is going to be. So therefore, we don't know precisely what the total cost is going to be until we really determine what it is that we would like to do at the high school as well.
I just have a quick question about it. Does that $800,000 that we're looking to absorb in those first 3 years encompass the number, the amount of money that we're not encumbering from the lease to Antonelli? So I assume we're going to lose that lease, you know, the income we got from that lease. How does that? I don't know what that income is, but how is that number figured into these overall projections?
That process is already begun. Springfield.
Those properties are starting to come on with the tax rates. So as that comes on, that's another thing I'm looking at. To the extent
Okay. So now we will move on to the administrative report by Dr. Nancy Hacker.
Thank you. Last year, Dr. Atkinson and myself were involved in conversations with folks from Upper Dublin School District and Germantown Academy who had a teacher of Chinese in residence. It piqued our interest in terms of the possibilities for our district and as well. Dr. Atkinson continued those conversations, and as a result, due to our connections with those folks, we were able to investigate and successfully have the connections made with the Chinese Ministry of Education so that we would be able to welcome a Chinese teacher here in our district. We decided that the best place for an introduction to Chinese, at least in terms of culture as well as language, would be at Erdenheim at the elementary level. So I'm going to ask Mr. McLaurin to come up and to introduce our new teacher who is here this evening and who we welcomed at an assembly last week. The Erdenheim children and teachers did a fabulous job welcoming her into their midst.
Good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Ms. Shan Shin, who has been with us for almost a week now, visiting from China, and she'll be here for, at this point, a year working in our school. So far in this first week, we've had the opportunity within our school community to welcome Shan officially, as Dr. Hacker mentioned. Our entire school community welcomed her on Thursday morning. It started off with a great meet and greet breakfast with our staff where we had the chance to just have some light breakfast and get the chance to have some light conversations with Shan. And then we were able to have a school-wide assembly. And in that assembly, each grade level had the opportunity to do some form of a welcoming to Shan, whether that be with our band and our chorus, our second graders read a poem. We also had our third graders did their recorders. And then so we had a really great opportunity to welcome her into our school community. And it was a really great day because the entire school community embraced Shanshan and excitedly had welcomed her. And so at this time, our plan is to continue to transition in. Shanshan has had the opportunity to visit some classrooms. She's had the opportunity to observe some teachers, and she's eagerly excited to begin exposing our students to the Chinese culture in various ways. And so wanted to take this opportunity to thank a couple people, most notably Dr. Hacker and Dr. Atkinson, for all of their behind-the-scenes work to make this possible. And I'd also like to thank the staff and the students at Erdenheim who have done a phenomenal job at welcoming Shanshan here to our school community and to our country, and just for helping to get you settled here in the United States. There was a lot of behind-the-scenes work that our staff was able to bring to the forefront to make everything smooth as possible in terms of the transition. And I also want to thank you, Shanshan, for just being a pleasure over this first week. You can see the smile. The students are so excited to get to know you, but just willing to embrace our culture, willing to ask questions, willing to get to know our students and our school community. So thank you so much for just being here.
Andre, maybe Shanshan can tell a little bit about herself by way of introduction.
Definitely.
Hello, everyone. I'm not familiar with this room. Okay, my name is Shanshan Chen, and back in China, I teach students all over the world to learn Chinese in a university. Its name is Fudan University. It's the third best university in China. Very proud of it. And I got here the Sunday before last. And I have been having a great time spending my time in the school because I have never met this many talented children in my life. I couldn't believe it when they were presenting me the assembly. It was amazing. The kids were so talented, and I just cannot believe that kids can be so thoughtful and mature when they are still in the primary school. I couldn't believe that, but it all happened, and I'm feeling really lucky to be here to learn something new, to learn how things work in American school. I'm learning things every day, and I hope that after observing the class, I can bring the kids and the teachers a sense of Chinese culture, and gradually we can work together to work on something further. And I'm really excited about it. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who has helped me to settle in, because it has been really, really nice of you, and I'm very grateful. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hacker. Thank you, Dr. Atkinson. Yeah. And I'd like to take this opportunity to give you a small gift. So it's 2016 here in the United States, but in China, we're still 2015. Our new year has not started yet because Spring Festival has not come yet. Yeah. So this is a calendar of the year of 2016, and it's the year of monkey. So I'd like to red color, and I hope I can take this tray
Thank you very much and welcome. So our next agenda item is a presentation by Dr. Nancy Hacker.
Actually, I have two presentations this evening, so bear with me. But one of them is to show what I learned when I was on my trip to China. But I'm going to start off first with our preliminary budget presentation. I'd have to, I'm sorry. So what I'm going to do this evening is very quickly, at the request of Mrs. Slapinski, go through our preliminary budget presentation. And one of the reasons for going through it very quickly, as everybody at this point I think really understands, this is very preliminary. It is very early in the budget process. And of course, this year in particular, we don't even have a budget for the current school year, much less a guess as to what the budget situation is going to look like for 2016-2017. So we're going to try to move through it as quickly as possible. And of course, we always begin with our mission statement, which of course we read at every board meeting. And the reason is to keep upfront in everyone's mind the reason why we're here and where the dollars go. In order to be able to educate and develop all of our students as learners and citizens, we obviously have to fund the programs, the facilities, and the teaching and learning activities for our students through the budget. So this allows us to pursue our district goals and to be able to pay for the things that we basically do every day through our business here in the district. So I just want to point out which specific goals the budget process serves, because this really encompasses just about everything that we do as an overview. Obviously, a quality educational program encompasses a significant amount in terms of our curriculum, our materials that we provide for our students, the special needs issues that we have to address through the educational program, the gifted students. This is all learners, all different facets of the educational program. We also are seeing a significant increase in the number of emotional and social needs of our students who are coming to us, actually even beginning as early as kindergarten. So in order to address those needs and the issues that we are seeing with our students, we have to provide for the resources that they need, whether it is human resources such as our psychologists and social workers and guidance counselors, whether it's training needs for staff members so they are better equipped to become familiar with the social and emotional welfare issues, or specific resources that the students themselves need in order to be able to develop better coping skills. We also want to ensure that we look at the holistic student, and that includes not only their educational program during the regular school day, but also both before and after school. You heard Mrs. Slapinski address Max Michaels before, and his wonderful work in the singing group, the a cappella group that Mr. Puntel has started here at the high school. And we all were treated to a fabulous winter concert last week. Tomorrow night we have an instrumental music concert that's going to be taking place at Erdenheim. All of these activities are possible because of a wide array of extracurricular activities that we offer at all of our schools for our students. We know that students are more well-rounded when they're able to participate in all kinds of different extracurricular activities. They learn teamwork, they learn leadership, they learn social skills. So we believe that having a full complement of extracurricular activities is equally important for the students' development, as is our academic program. We also know the importance, and we just had a conversation about some potential in terms of new facilities and improved facilities here in the district. We also know that we have, over the course of the past several years, invested heavily in terms of upgrading of our facilities and ensuring the safety and security of our schools as well. We've had conversations about building cleanliness, so well-maintained facilities are essential for the safety and security of our students. And finally, of course, our staff is continually in need of training, not only for all of the bullets that I previously mentioned, but for any initiatives which are not only mandated by the state, but also which we believe are important in order to include and to improve instructional capacity within the classroom. So the Pennsylvania Act 1 index requires that we are not permitted to raise taxes above a certain level. This year for Springfield Township, our index is set at a 2.4% increase, which raises approximately $932,000. So where we are right now, we are looking at slightly more, actually a little bit more than double that at 5.6%. When we took all of the numbers that were brought to us by the staff in terms of wants and needs, and we also looked very carefully at how to best meet the needs from the previous bullet points, we found that we're now at a little bit over $2.1 million. So we have a significant deficit that we have to overcome. And as I'm fond of saying, this is where we are now, but that just means that we have a lot of work to do and a lot of pencil sharpening between now, January, early January, and June, when the board is responsible for adopting a final budget. So we have our work cut out for us. So this really outlays what the budget process is and how do we get to those numbers. And we start small. We start within each of the departments, including our schools, as well as our special ed department, our curriculum and instruction department, our human resources department, and all of the administrators who are responsible for those departments, as well as our buildings, must put together a budget. And in order to do that, in the schools, for example, they have to look at enrollments. What are projected enrollments? So we have to look ahead to the future. And even though we begin the process as early as October of the previous year, we have to do a lot of educated guesswork about what our enrollment is going to look like for the following school year. We look at our feasibility study, we look at our enrollment projections, we look at new initiatives that the state is telling us it's going to be adopting, and through that, we build the budgets in each one of those departments. We also have to plan for staffing. We look ahead to see if there are going to be any projected retirements. The staff members are not obligated to give us that information at this point. Some of them may choose to do so, but we won't actually have final figures on who is retiring for another few months. We look at whether or not we're planning to add any additional programs to what we're already offering. And we also look at our contract. We are fortunate that this year and coming up for next year, other than our Act 93 administrative group, all of our contracts are stable and settled. So we know precisely what those figures are going to be for our staff salaries. What we don't necessarily know, even though we know the proportion that they will be required to contribute towards benefits, we don't know yet what our final benefits increases are going to be at this time. Again, January is very, very early. We don't have those figures yet. Mr. King also then looks at our revenue figures. Again, a lot of this is guesswork. We don't have final figures in terms of the state budget. As I said before, we don't even have our state figures for the current school year. So we're kind of operating on all of our other revenue sources. Fortunately, or maybe not so fortunately for Springfield Township, the bulk of our revenue does not come from the state. It comes from local tax dollars. So therefore, we're not reliant on the state, which is why we're not as concerned about the lack of a budget as perhaps some other districts are, which get significantly more in state aid. So we do try to look at those figures now. We don't get a significant number of federal dollars, which you're going to see in a moment, and that figure tends to continue to decrease. And then we also try to determine healthcare costs. Benefits, as some of you may recall from last year, take up a significant portion of our budget, as do salaries. So when we look at healthcare projected increases, as well as our PSERS costs for the state retirement system, those are figures that we also try to plug in at this time. And those are very heavy drivers, as you'll see in the budget. So this just gives you an idea of the local revenue sources versus the state and the federal. And as you can see, as I said before, $44 million out of an approximate, so far, $54 million in our total budget comes from local revenue. So our state share, unfortunately, is proportionately very small. And as you can see, projected for next year, a drop in the bucket as far as our federal revenue is concerned. And this just gives you an idea, a little bit of a comparison between last year and this year. Last year is in the lavender color, and next year, or actually it's not last year, I'm sorry, it's for this current school year. Those are the figures. And then the green is projected for next year. So again, this shows those three revenue sources and really what makes up the pot in each of those areas. So the state contributes what is called a basic education subsidy, which is for overall general education costs. They contribute some special ed dollars to us. What's not listed up there is also transportation dollars that are contributed by the state. They pay a portion of our Social Security and our PSERS costs as well. That's up there. That's a fairly significant number compared to the total. And then, of course, we have gambling dollars that come in to help to offset the budget as well for our taxpayers. So those are the main drivers in terms of where the state revenue comes from. Federal dollars, as you can see, very, very minimal. Some specific title dollars, which are for students of poverty, for Title II for technology and training, and Title III for our English as a second language population as well. Very, very minimal dollars coming to us because those populations, comparatively speaking, are small. The access reimbursement is for certain services that are provided to us generally for our special ed population. The reimbursements have been declining for a number of years. Actually, our district, as well as many other districts across the state, are involved in heavy-duty fighting with the state over what those reimbursements have been up until this point. So we're all embroiled and a part of an actual lawsuit with the state in terms of trying to get more access dollars reimbursed. And then finally, of course, the local share. The bulk of it comes from property taxes. Some of it comes from other sources, such as an earned income tax in the township, as well as delinquent tax dollars, the penalties assessed for those individuals who cannot or choose not to pay their taxes on time. So this just gives you an idea of the different coded areas of the budget and where the dollars come from. Gives you a little bit of a comparison over a 3-year period from 2 years ago, from 2014-15 to the current year to projected for next year, 2016-17. And the items in the red show an increase in the dollars from one year to the next. The items in the green actually show a decrease in how much we are budgeting for each of those coded areas. And the reason that I highlight that is to show that not every area in the budget is always going up from year to year. We make a very concerted effort to try to decrease the amount of dollars that we are budgeting in specific areas. That shows that all of the administrators are careful watchdogs of the public dollars. There are some areas, however, where we can't help it. And obviously, salaries and benefits, which comprise the largest portion of our budget, are areas where we can't necessarily help the increases. I do, however, want to point out that in salaries, we held salaries for the coming school year to the projected 1.9% increase, which was allocated through our contractual negotiations with both our support staff and our professional staff. We did not go above that amount. The additional dollars that are in there are more related to PSERS than anything else. So I'm very proud of the fact that we really have, despite the fact that not only do we have a large PSERS increase, but we also have some new positions that we are putting into the budget. We otherwise held the line in terms of increases on salaries. The benefits increases are fairly significant. Again, these are first numbers, but the biggest increase was in our prescription benefits plan. That saw a big jump in dollars, and at this point we're looking at the first look for our medical. We do expect that that number hopefully will come down, but I have to tell you, doesn't always come down when we look at the second look. So right now, we really don't know what's going to happen with that. But if you take a look at the bottom line number in the 2016-2017 budget, you'll see it's actually less than the total number from last year. And this just gives you a kind of visual look at the pie, which shows the allocations in those same budget-coded categories. And obviously, the red on the right and the green on the left are salaries and benefits. So all of the other pieces of the pie, facilities maintenance, capital projects that are included in that, our purchase services, legal expenses, auditing expenses, accounting expenses, professional development, supplies, equipment, all the things it takes to run a school district are actually only about a little less than a quarter of the pie, not very much. So these are some of our major oops, sorry about that. Not sure what happened. Come on, technology. It is running slow. It's probably going to go back 3 slides. Maybe we need to invest in some new technology. There we go. Up, no. There we go. Okay. Hopefully this will, oh, no. Got it? Okay. So obviously we've been talking about PSERS. We know that the contributions into the retirement system, which by the way is not just the district, employees contribute into the PSERS system as well. But for the district, it's been a significant impact on the budget over the past 2 years, a little bit under $2.5 million. So this is a real concern for all of us, and I'm sure anyone who's been following the budget crisis knows that there's been a lot of talk about pension reform in an effort to try to bring those costs down at the state level. Healthcare, again, projected to be an increase, and healthcare includes medical, dental, and prescription costs for the district. Mr. King has wisely looked at our aging bus fleet and has determined that the best way to address this in order to ensure that we have turnover of the oldest buses in the fleet is to continually allocate a certain amount. So the $500,000 allocation will continue to be a smaller percentage as the budget goes up over time. So by keeping that allocation constant, we continually can replace older buses within the fleet. But as I said, as the budget goes up over time and expenses increase over time, it will be a smaller percentage of what the budget is. It's a very clever way of addressing the issue and ensuring that we constantly replace the oldest and unsafe buses that we have. And then finally, we talked a lot about social and emotional welfare of our students and the need to program for that. We also know that through our feasibility study and by looking at our current numbers, that the chances are very good that we're going to have an additional classroom at Erdenheim as well as possibly at Enfield. So we have actually put 2 teachers into the budget in case that should come to pass. We'll know better probably by June after kindergarten registration whether or not both of those will come to fruition. The middle school has requested a guidance counselor. As you know, the population there has continued to grow. There is currently only 1 guidance counselor to handle the needs of all of the students. And while we all know that Judy Smith walks on water, she can't do it alone. There really is need for a second counselor. We tried to band-aid the problem last year by having one of our guidance counselors from Erdenheim spend part of her day over at the middle school, but we felt that really wasn't the best solution for the students. They deserved another guidance counselor to help them. And we all know that middle school can be a very troubling and problematic period of time as our youth go through adolescence. And finally, at the high school, thanks to Dr. Johnston and her recommendations in really serving our special needs students and what was required in order to be able to provide for them. We want to have a continuum of support that builds from the elementary through the middle school and actually moves over into the high school as well. And for that, we need to be able to continue the autistic support services that we provide for a number of our students going through the middle school into the high school. We would much prefer to program for them and provide for their needs at that level. So that's why we've built that position into the budget as well. And as I am always fond of saying, I want to tie this together with what we said in the beginning, that the budget provides the dollars in order to be able to support the various goals that we talked about. Obviously, everyone has different wants and needs and priorities when they look at how the dollars are being spent. Our responsibility is to balance all of that and to keep in mind not only the fiscal responsibility that we have to be able to provide all of the things that we mentioned, but also we're always mindful of our community and the taxing burden that we have on the citizens within the community. So I know that, we just had a large conversation about future building needs, and we know it's a balance. It's a continual struggle between what can we afford to provide and what do we believe we need to provide in order to be able to assist our students as they come through our schools. So I always like to end by suggesting that the budget is always difficult because everybody has competing interests in terms of what the budget represents. But we work very, very hard to really toe the line. And I think you saw that when we showed you what that figure was for 2016-17, that it is actually less than what it was at this time last year. And our goal is to chop off that $1.2 million that you saw in that deficit in terms of the tax increase. Any questions from anyone? Yes.
Just really quickly, the delinquent taxes amounted to a little over $1 million. What percentage of those taxes is realistic to actually be collected?
I think Mr. King can probably give you an idea based on history.
I can't give you a definitive number, but it's rather large. The amount of delinquent taxes that we have beyond the most recent fiscal year is very small compared to other districts. And it's going down, actually. The amount that we've leaned is going down each year, so it's a positive thing. It's also, so that has a positive effect also on our revenue now in the current year because our collection rate goes up. So that's more revenue we can expect in the current year. So we're doing pretty well.
I just had another quick question. So we've, like our facilities, we've been going round and round with the bus issue for a couple years. So did we purchase a new bus this year in our current budget, or are we starting that for next year? I don't remember.
Oh, an RFP is about to hit the street for new buses.
Okay.
We have purchased used buses. We had a few of our members of our fleet just gave up. So we went out and we bought used buses to fill in for them until we can get this whole program running.
Is that it? Okay, thank you very much for your attention. We're going to move on. I'm going to try to go through this quickly. I want to thank the board, first of all, for allowing me to take this opportunity to visit China with a number of my colleagues from Montgomery County. It was a phenomenal experience. And just as Shan talked about the fabulous welcome that she's had by the individuals here in this country and here in Springfield Township and in our district, I, too, was fortunate to have a fabulous welcome, which you're going to see very shortly, by every school that we visited. If you think this was a tourist trip, it was not. We only spent one day touring. The rest of the trip was visiting schools throughout Henan province and in Beijing. So I really want to highlight some of the differences and similarities that we saw. And this is loading through. So the top arrow shows Beijing. We flew into Beijing. It was about a 13-hour flight, and Beijing is ahead of us time-wise. So going over wasn't too terrible because we got there in the evening. We quickly ate and went to bed, so it wasn't too bad. I know that Shan attended a wedding before she came here. Coming back is murder because you leave in the morning, Beijing time. You arrive here in the morning. She had already been up the day before going to a wedding, so she was up for over 36 hours when she got here. It is quite the grueling trip. I never could appreciate how difficult it is because when you get here after traveling 13 hours and you're not really sleeping well, it's only the morning. You're up the entire day until you can go back to bed. The second hour is Henan province, where we spent most of our time. So our first stop in Beijing was at a Hilton hotel, and as you can see, it was a magnificent hotel. The Chinese Ministry of Education, Hanban, and the Chinese government sponsored the trip, and they had fabulous accommodations for us. So the very first day of the trip, on the right-hand side, was an overview of what our trip was going to be, and they described to us what the Chinese education system was like. On day 2, we immediately got into a bus and we traveled to the train station in order to go to Henan province. We were fortunate enough to travel on the Silver Bullet train, which is one of the fastest trains in the world. Travels over 200 miles an hour. We were in first-class accommodations, which was really special. But the reason I wanted to show all these is for a couple of reasons. Number one, I was fascinated that there was a license plate that had American Arabic numerals on it and wasn't in Chinese. It turns out that years ago, probably a decade ago, everybody in China was on a scooter or a bicycle. But now they have such a traffic problem with cars that the license plates have certain numbers on them, and you are not allowed to drive your car in the city of Beijing if you have a certain numeral on it on a certain day of the week. And that's how they try to control the traffic problem. On one of the days, we left our hotel, and it took us over 2 hours to get out of the city. And Beijing is quite a large city, but you can imagine the traffic was totally blocked. That's how many cars there are now in the city. It's a little bit hard to see, but on the bottom right, you'll see a number of people on scooters. It was chilly while we were there. The weather was very similar to November weather here in the States. And they cover themselves up as they're riding around on the scooters. I don't know if you can see, but they're wearing masks. And everybody probably at this point has heard about the tremendous smog problem in Beijing, and it is bad. They actually have a system where they rate how bad the smog is going to be. And I thought this was really interesting. On the right hand, I have a picture of the people with their little smog masks on.
And we were given smog masks, although most of us were too vain to put them on. But you really could feel it in your throat and in your nose when you're breathing this horrible, horrible air. Fortunately, after we left was the day of the deadliest air that they've apparently recorded in many, many years. But I thought it was interesting that shortly after I got back, this cartoon was from the Springfield Sun. So when we went to take the bullet train, here we are in the train station, the main train station in Beijing, and we literally did stick out like a sore thumb. Everybody has dark hair, and they look very, very similar, and we as Caucasians really stuck out significantly. I'm over on the right with Mary Kay Feely, the superintendent of the Lower Moreland School District. On the left, standing on the right side of the picture, is Brad Landis, the assistant executive director of the IU. He has grayish blonde hair. I had blondish hair, and everybody stared at us as we walked through the train station. So our first trip, once we arrived in Jiangsu, which is one of the main cities in Henan province, you'll see Dr. Feely, who ended up being the spokesperson for our group, meeting the school principal. And this is one of the schools that we first visited. It was an elementary school. And the school administrator on the right was the principal who greeted us, along with, the assistant principal. The children had laid out artwork for us to greet us on our arrival, which was really fascinating to see what they had done. And when we walked in, I have to tell you, in the center picture, this was what greeted us. And it really did literally bring tears to my eyes when I walked in and I saw all the children standing up. So Shan, I know you had a wonderful reception as well. And likewise, I had spoken to Andre before she got here, and I said, we have to do something really special because they treated us really great when we were there. And so they did. They did a fabulous job over at Erdenheim for her. So this was the assembly to welcome us. Everybody got up and spoke and presented gifts. And then the children prepared a number of things for us. So I'm just going to give you a little taste of some of the things they did to greet us. So the left one, please, Dave. This is a traditional Chinese instrument. Shan, do you know what it's called? Okay, Dave, we're going to go to the one on the right. This is not so traditional Chinese. The song is called Lemon Tree. So we went from the old to the new very quickly. This is a typical day. We had another dance presentation later on in the day, but I want to show you a glimpse of what recess looks like at a Chinese school. Dave, the one on the left.
现在开始做少林武术操，原地踏步，走。
The entire school marches out, goes into the yard, someone shouts the commands at them over the loudspeaker, and everyone does the same exercises. Are those numbers? Are those? So recess looks a bit different. The dance presentation. So they are every bit as modern as our teenagers and our students. see. We were able to visit classes of the students. This was a music class that we visited. You'll notice the children are all wearing coats. The buildings are not heated. So they go through school wearing their coats. You'll also notice the large number of students in a class. Every single classroom we visited, whether it was elementary, middle school, or high school, had approximately 50 to 60 students in the classroom. A small class had 30 to 35. Very, very different. This was a friend that I made in the class. They were learning the song "Oh Susanna" in English. And so in order to don our Western gear and sing along, we all got hats and different kinds of instruments. This was an English class where the lesson was on shopping, and we participated. We asked the students things like, how much does the pair of pants cost? And the students would answer, the pants cost $20. And so we had a good time working with the students in English class. And by the way, I hope it's correct. Shan, don't tell me if it's not correct, but I did look up in Chinese on Google Translation what the words are for things like English class and lunch. Every lunch that we had was literally a feast, where we were treated to Chinese delicacies, some of which we knew, some of which we did not know. So fortunately, we did have Chinese individuals who were part of our tour who were able to explain to us what it was that we were eating. And I will tell you, I tried everything. Even though I was nervous about some things, I did try everything. Every meal that was served to us was on a Lazy Susan. And you'll see on the right-hand side, the watermelon. The end of the Chinese meal is not a sweet. They typically serve fruit, which is why sometimes in a Chinese restaurant you'll get orange slices. It was watermelon every place that we went to. Is it going? Okay. This was a high school that we visited, and you can see the delegation of students that met us outside. They were all dressed up and took us into their school. And there should be a slide coming up. They greeted us as well with different performances, dressed up in traditional Chinese costumes for dance, combat weapons, and they did a kung fu demonstration. This was an English literature lesson. This actually was a paper that was in the hallways showing 100 A+. Wow. I thought that was pretty interesting. This was our dinner. Shan, remember you asked about the hot pot? She had asked if we knew what traditional Mongolian hot pot was. It is like fondue, but it's with broth, and you cook your vegetables and your meat and your seafood in the broth. And each one of us had an individual hot pot with a burner in front of us at the table. So it was really, really interesting. And you can see how many of them are around that large table. So we really got to taste a number of Chinese specialties, which was really interesting. This was a middle school and a high school that we visited. As you can see, we were divided into groups. The children all spoke English, some more fluently than others, but one of the amazing things about our trip was to hear how conversant the students really are in the English language. They begin studying it as early as 3rd grade, at least the students that we met. So they all know English very, very well. This was another welcome in the auditorium of one of the schools that we went to. Everybody couldn't have been more thrilled to greet us. This was a traditional math class. It actually was a functions class at the high school level. On the left, you can see how many students there are. What was really fascinating was all of their desks have those books sitting on them. No students opened any books the entire time we were there. And they, as opposed to the US where you have a thick textbook, they have very small notebooks and small workbooks that they use for every single unit in the course. And that's what's sitting on their desks there. It is basically a lecture style. We didn't see a lot of interaction between the students. If they were called upon, they stand up in order to respond. We saw absolutely no discipline problems. We don't know whether that they were performing for us, but we have a feeling that they wouldn't be tolerated. These were two of the presentations that we saw. Dave, the one on the left. They're not real, by the way. Kind of like watching a movie with Jet Li. Dave, you want to do the one on the right? This was the equivalent of their marching band. And by the way, those are dormitories in the back. The students at the high school are residential and they stay over. Okay, just for time, I'm going to go on to the next one. And there I am. I got a chance to bang on the drums myself. They brought them over for us. And of course, we worked up a big appetite after all of that musicianship. On the left is a delicacy in China. It's called yellow river carp. Carp is not a popular fish here in the United States, but in China, the way it's prepared is considered to be very, very special. So almost all of the meals we were served the famous Chinese yellow river carp. And all of those things on top of the fish are actually noodles that are prepared. And we did have famous American Sprite and Coke as well. Some people, by the way, would not eat the carp. And you pick at it. You just stick your chopsticks in and you just pick at it. Also in Henan province, we visited the beautiful city of Kaifeng. And it's very interesting because it has both old and new elements. But this was, as we walked around the city, these are all beautiful flower and botanical arrangements that they have at the intersection of the circles where the cars go and the highways. Really, really fascinating sculptures as well as the blanketed floral arrangements. And there's Old Kaifeng on the right, as well as brand new. And we traveled to Kaifeng from Zhangzhou, which was our kind of central location where we were staying after we took the train. Very, very modern cities. Zhangzhou literally was built within the last decade. They have beautiful, what looks like canals and rivers, all man-made. But it's really, really magnificent. So it was really interesting to be able to see what's coming from the markets, which are old-style Kaifeng, and the new buildings that they've been building. There's huge, huge construction all over China. Absolutely incredible. It's a big file. That's why it's taking a long time. I apologize. Okay. So this was another school, an elementary school in Kaifeng, where we were welcomed. The children made all of these different designs for us. This was art class, and this is a very famous Chinese artist. They were kind enough to give me the book. And in addition to what the children were doing where he was teaching a lesson, he just very quickly, within about 30 seconds, made this for me to take, and he handed it to me so I could take it as a souvenir, which was really cool. But I'll pass this around. He has some really beautiful landscape pictures. Jeff, excuse me. We must have been there during specials time, because that afternoon we went to all different kinds of gaming types of classes. We went to a Chinese paper cutting class, and you really get an idea of how many children there are in the class on the left. Again, there must have been about 60 children in that class. The cooking class, they all have their little hair pieces covering them, and they actually were making chicken dumplings. And we did get to taste them. They were very good. And again, more arts classes. That was a music class on the right. And the children were just precious. They were so happy to see us. We gave them Hershey kisses. This was a games class, and you see the wood blocking on the right. They're actually doing stamps where they're cutting out the Chinese letters of their names so they can stamp their name on paper. And then that was a game on the left. We're not quite sure how they play that. Chess, and then martial arts outside. So it really was like their specials. Dave, was this one? I think this one is one. Okay, Dave, we're going to go on to the next one. Just to, again, give you a taste. Okay. Go ahead, Dave, on the left. Same instrument as before. And Dave, let's go to the one on the right. This was my favorite. I don't know if you can see the children clearly, but they're about the age of kindergarten and first grade. Their teachers are playing along with them. The instruments are almost bigger than they are. They're really into it. I wanted you to see that part. Okay, Dave, thanks. They were just absolutely adorable. And here they are a little bit close up. Very, very proud of what they were doing. And this was our free time in Kaifeng to do some touring and some shopping. I brought back a lot of silk. Everybody got a silk scarf, except the men. Kaifeng at night. This was one of the last public schools that we visited. And the reason I have the picture in the center, again, you see the campus on the right. Again, a lot of the students are residential. They may travel from the provinces to come to one of these schools. They're all by admission. And so you see a lot, but you don't see a lot. You don't see special education students. You don't see discipline problems. The students are up very early in the morning, and they work until about 10 o'clock at night or even later. They're very, very diligent, and they're very proud of their work. In the center, in the library, that was all that we saw. There are no computers. Anybody know why? It's China. They don't want the students to have access, except in one school that we saw. This was a science class, and those are animals. One is an elephant, or the one that I took the pictures of is an elephant that was created in the STEM class. Their assignment was to create an animal robot that did something, that picked something up, that fetched something. So we saw dogs that fetched things. The elephant picked things up with his trunk. It was really a wonderful, wonderful demonstration. And this was our opportunity to meet representatives of all of the schools to see if we wanted to enter into partnerships where we would be sponsoring Chinese teachers coming over to the country or vice versa. We already had the good fortune of knowing that Shan was coming, so we didn't need to enter into another partnership, at least not yet. One of our free afternoons, we traveled to Shaolin Temple, which is an extraordinarily famous landmark in the provinces in China. It literally means the temple in the woods of Shaoxi Mountain, and it comes from many, 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 many centuries ago. So this was the inside of the temple that we got to visit. From the temple, we went to visit one of the high schools called Shaolin High School, but you can see they still have Buddhist monks who are at Shaolin Temple. And this is where a division of Buddhism called Shan Buddhism actually began many, many centuries ago. People still come and pray at Shaolin Temple. It truly is one of the most famous landmarks. And interestingly enough, a couple weeks ago, a high school buddy of mine sent me an article about one of the high priests from Shaolin Temple who has been accused of embezzling the funds that people leave at Shaolin Temple, which was kind of sad. So this is the home of Shaolin Wushu College, and I'm just going to pass this around. What you're going to see is a booklet of this. It's not a college, it's actually a high school. This is an academic high school where they train the students in Kung Fu. This region of China is the most famous home to the art of Kung Fu. Centuries old, but really perfected within the last 200 years. And we were fortunate enough to see an incredible performance by 10,000 students out of the 36,000 that attend this school. So we saw 10,000. This is only a smidgen that you can see because I couldn't possibly get everything into the frame. They performed at the Beijing Olympics. So Dave, this is just a little bit of what we saw. area that they were on was about the equivalent of about 10 football fields. Okay, Jason.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
Are they all boys?
they were all boys.
Thank you.
Yep. Apparently not. Federal law doesn't extend quite that far over the ocean. Day 7, we went to Tiananmen Square and the Forbidden City. The square is absolutely immense. We did not get in to see the tomb of Mao Zedong, but we were in the square, and we did go into the Forbidden City, which was the home of the emperor and all of the officials who served with the emperor, including his concubines. There's our group. Angelo Barrios on the left is the principal of Abington High School, and they do have advanced placement Chinese that they offer at Abington, which is very impressive. Mary Kay Feely from Lower Moreland, Tim Wade from Jenkintown, Deb Wheeler from Upper Dublin, and Brad Landis from the IU. So we had a great group, and we were with, by the way, a total group of 300 educators from across the country. This was getting ready to enter the Forbidden City. I didn't know what the Forbidden City was, but as I said, it was the home of the emperor, his concubines, and all of his officials, and it was called Forbidden because normal folks like us were not allowed to enter. So we kind of thought this was it. We're going into the Forbidden City. This is it, some pretty neat buildings, and there's the palace and so forth, and we thought, that's it. So then we got inside and we see, oh, wait, look, there's another building in there. And we see, okay, here's another building that we're going into. So we thought, all right, we'll be done when we get on the other side of that palace. What we didn't realize is there are over 30 of those palaces. And to get from one to the next, you're walking that distance. So as you can see in the picture on the right, you see about 5 or 6 of the buildings. Imagine going 6 or 7 times that length in order to go through the entire Forbidden City. It was pretty amazing. And these are just some of the things that we saw surrounding the palaces and inside the palaces. On day 8, we were invited to the organization headquarters that, in conjunction with Han Ban, sponsored our trip to China, and they made all kinds of different things for us as we were coming in. And then we went to the Great Wall. So these are just some shots of the wall that we were able to take before trying to climb the Great Wall of China. And it extends thousands and thousands of miles in the mountains. If you look behind me, you'll see, laser pointer not working? No. If you look behind me in the center picture, and you see all the way to the top there, and also on the right, that was what we climbed. There we go. There's Mary Kay struggling. We all struggled. Part of the reason is because the steps are not even. So while one step might be, say, this high, another might be this high, and they did that so that conquering warriors would not be able to follow them on horseback up to where they built the wall. So it's a really, really hard uphill climb. The equivalent of over, I was told, 35 stories that we climbed. So we finally got to the top, and there's the view. It was a cloudy day, a little bit foggy, but we made it. But as tough as it is to go up, it's really frightening to try to go back down again. And that's the view looking down. Fortunately, they had those rails on the side. Never would have made it without modern railings. It must be really tired now. And finally, this was really incredible. The best was really for last. The Beijing Royal School was started by a real estate magnate in Beijing. It was on the outskirts of the city, and he funded this entire private school, which would be the equivalent of a Germantown Academy or a Chestnut Hill Springside here in the States. He funded the entire school. Tuition at the Beijing Royal School is approximately $35,000 a year. They have students from kindergarten all the way through high school. They offer over 33 advanced placement courses. And I'm just going to pass that around. It gives you an idea of some information about the Beijing Royal School. They had computers. They had everything possible. That's their library. We didn't see any libraries that looked like that with the stacks that they had. It was brand new. Oh, there we go. These are some of their facilities. They had a phenomenal gym, every sport that you could possibly imagine, brand new computer complex. The boardroom is on the left. I'm sure you would like a boardroom like the one that they have. The auditorium with the slip covers was on the right. They had all modern projection equipment. And again, they do get some contributions primarily from alumni now, but the seed money was from this Chinese billionaire, who also built a hospital right down the road. And then finally, after we were done there, we had more Yellow River carp when we went for our last meal before our final banquet. And again, you see the Lazy Susan. They do include the head and the tail on the fish, as you can see. And this was our farewell dinner. You can see the room has all 300 of us in the room. And what was really exciting for me was the president of the College Board in the United States came to address us, Dr. David Coleman. He's been president of the board for about 3 years. He's a young guy. He brought his mother, which was really kind of cute. He introduced his mom and paid homage to her and how she instilled in him a love for education, leading him to become president of the College Board. There's our group taking our final pictures. Again, American Sprite and Coke. There's David Coleman again, who spoke to us. The College Board was a sponsor as well of our trip and helped to pay for all of it. So I apologize it took so long, but it was a huge file, as you can see, with all the videos. But I hope it gives you a really fabulous taste of all the different things that I got to see. It was a really incredible experience. So once again, thank you to the board for allowing me to go. And thank you to all my administrators who took charge while I was away. There was nothing amiss. It was smooth sailing the entire time I was gone, which maybe I shouldn't be bragging about because maybe that doesn't bode well for me if they can do it without me. But they did. They carried on. So thank you to all my administrators. Questions, anybody? Yeah, Holly.
I'm wondering, in addition to how spoiled our students are having the very, very small class sizes here, if they mention at all about the extremely difficult examination process that their students have to go to, which is light years more difficult than the SATs that they have here.
They did. However, you have to keep in mind that not all students go through that. Every school that we saw, and by the way, these are some of our tour guides who were with us, every school that we saw was by admission only, other than the elementary schools. So the students that we spoke to, as I said, studied from 7 in the morning until 10 o'clock at night, sometimes later. And when we asked them why are you studying so hard? They said, we have to bring honor to our family and to our country, which is something that you don't typically hear in the United States from American children who are a little bit more focused on what they will get out of it. The students were all about, I have to bring honor to my parents, I have to bring honor to China. So there is a different impetus and motivation for studying. They also know if they don't study, they won't get ahead. There's an extraordinary consciousness of class in China, much more so than here in the States. So where we are the great equalizers and we feel the need to educate everyone, in China you earn your way into an education by your hard work and by your commitment, and if you don't cut the mustard, you don't get in.
And in those classes that had the 60 students, only one teacher in there, right?
But again, the students are there because they have huge motivation to want to succeed. They don't want to be on the carts you saw in Kaifang dragging vegetables around. They are the ones that want to go on to university. They are the ones that understand the importance of an education. And they know if they can't get into the high school, they're not going to make it. They are public schools. The only one that was private there was the Beijing Royal School. Everything else was a public school, but still by admission only. They don't go, and they work. So that's really a significant difference, and you don't have as large a university system in China as you do here. Here you have lots and lots and lots of universities for all different levels of learners. You don't have that in China. Anybody else? Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. One last thing that I have to show you because it's similar to what Shanshan brought. Look familiar? Each one of us, I don't know if it's upside down or not, Shanshan. This way? This way? Each one of us was presented with this scroll from one of the schools that we visited. I have no idea what it says, but when Shanshan presented us with that beautiful calendar, it reminded me of the scroll. So we're going to try to get it hung up in either one of the schools or the administration. And I have some other gifts that they were very generous to give me that are over by my microphone. Shanshan, can you tell us what it says?
Let me just take a close look.
Okay, I'm putting her on the spot.
Because in China, it's like we have a long history, and one dynasty, we have one writing style. So I'm not sure. Oh yeah, I can understand.
She passes the test.
Yeah, but it's traditional.
You wouldn't know what she's saying.
I wouldn't know if it's right or wrong.
Yeah, so this is, I think it's a poem or a very famous, a part of an article from a very, like, famous, I don't know how to say it, like, educator or poet back a long time ago.
A long time ago.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good enough for now. I put you on the spot. Thanks, Shanshan.
Thank you. That was wonderful. That was fascinating. Very exciting. Yeah, we do have some things to vote on, so we'll get started. No, it was fine. All right, so new business, number 1, personnel. Personnel attachment, the recommended motion. The Board of School Directors approves the following personnel as presented in the attachment: certificated personnel, confidential personnel, support personnel, temporary personnel, extra pay for extra responsibilities, conference workshop attendance. Is there a motion? Is there a second? Any questions or comments? Mr. King?
Chapman. Ms. Casalis. Mr. Lapidus. Ms. Nelson. Ms. Sarsfield. Dr. Terra Mr. Taylor. Ms. Lipinski.
Aye. Number 2, approval of the 2016-2017 Eastern Center budget. Recommended motion. The Board of School Directors approves the resolution for the 2016-2017 general operating budget between Eastern Center for Arts and Technology and the School District of Springfield Township. Is there a motion? Is there a second? Any questions or comments? Mr. King?
Mr. Chapman. Ms. Casalis. Mr. Lapidus. Ms. Nelson. Ms. Sarsfield. Dr. Terra Mr. Taylor. Ms. Lipinski.
Aye. Number 3, 2016-2017 school calendar. The recommended motion. The Board of School Directors approves the 2016-2017 school calendar as per attachment U. Is there a motion? Is there a second? Any questions or comments?
Mr. Chapman. Ms. Casalis. Mr. Lapidus. Ms. Nelson. Ms. Sarsfield. Dr. Terra Mr. Taylor. Ms. Lipinski.
Aye. Number 4, adoption of 2016-2017 preliminary budget. Recommended motion. The Board of School Directors adopts the 2016-2017 preliminary budget and authorizes the administration to file for Act 1 exceptions, Attachment V. Is there a motion? Is there a second? Any questions or comments? Mr. King?
Mr. Chapman. Ms. Casalis. Mr. Lapidus. Ms. Nelson. Ms. Sarsfield. Dr. Terra Mr. Taylor. Ms. Lipinski.
Aye. Number 5, appointment of para designated person. Recommended motion. The Board of School Directors approves the attached agreement with Environmental Control Systems, Inc. to act as the district's designated person and oversee the school district's Asbestos Hazard Emergency Response Act, AHERA, management plan through June 30th, 2017, Attachment W. Is there a motion? Is there a second? Any questions or comments? Mr. King?
Mr. Chapman. Ms. Casalis. Mr. Lapidus. Ms. Nelson. Ms. Sarsfield. Dr. Terra Mr. Taylor. Ms. Lipinski.
Aye. Number 6, approve MCIU Access Consultation Services Agreement. Recommended motion. The Board of School Directors approves the attached agreement with Montgomery County Intermediate Unit to coordinate the district's access billing process, Attachment X. Is there a motion? Is there a second? Any questions or comments?
Can I just ask a question? Are there other districts that go through MCIU also for access billing?
Yes, there are. We're using them on a temporary basis because our access coordinator resigned.
Okay.
So until we can find somebody new to take over that position, we wanted to continue to be able to process some of the reimbursement forms with them. And they will also train any new person that we hire.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Anyone else? Mr. King?
Mr. Chapman. Ms. Casalis. Mr. Lapidus. Ms. Nelson. Ms. Sarsfield. Dr. Terra Mr. Taylor. Ms. Lipinski.
Aye. Number 7, approval of lease agreement. Recommended motion. The The Board of School Directors approves the attached lease agreement with Kidview, Inc. for the initial term of 5 years effective January 1st, 2015 to June 30th, 2020, in the annual rent amounts listed. 2015-2016, $6,000. 2017, sorry, I'm going to go side to side. 2016-2017, $7,753. 2017-2018, $10,019. 2018-2019, $12,946. 2019-2020, $16,729. At the end of the initial term option to renew for the lease for an additional period of 5 years, extend term, for the annual rent increases equal to the greater of 3% or the consumer price index in the Philadelphia, Wilmington, Atlantic City area as February 1st. Is there a motion? Is there a second? Any questions or comments? Should there be an addition to February 1st there? Oh, every year, okay. Okay, got it. All right. Anyone else?
Mr. Chapman. Mr. Salas. Mr. Lapidus. Ms. Nelson. Ms. Sarsfield. Dr. Teratuski. Mr. Taylor. Ms. Lipinski.
Aye. Number 8, approve new 403B provider. Recommended motion. The Board of School Directors approves the addition of Aspire Financial Services, LLC, to the district's approved 403B vendor list. Is there a motion? Is there a second? Any questions or comments? Mr. King?
Mr. Chapman. Mr. Salas. Mr. Lapidus. Ms. Nelson. Ms. Sarsfield. Dr. Teratuski. Mr. Taylor. Ms. Lipinski.
Aye. Number 9, request to issue RFP. Recommended motion. The Board of School Directors authorizes the administration to issue a request for proposal for architect services and designs related to the potential projects identified by the recent feasibility study. Is there a motion? Is there a second? Second. Any questions or comments? Mr. King?
Mr. Chapman. Mr. Salas. Mr. Lapidus. Ms. Nelson. Ms. Sarsfield.
Aye.
Dr. Teratuski. Mr. Taylor. Ms. Lipinski.
Aye. Are there any public comments on non-agenda items? Future meeting dates, we will be having one school board meeting in February. That will be Tuesday, February 16th, 2016 at 7 p.m. in the Freeze Memorial Lobby. The next board committee meeting is Academic Affairs on Thursday, January 21st, 2016 at 5:30 p.m. in the Administration Building. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night. Motion to adjourn.